I've been playing RuneScape for over 20 years now, and it has always been compared to the titan known as World of Warcraft. However, I never got the chance to play World of Warcraft during my childhood, and by the time I set foot in Azeroth, it was completely different from what I was expecting. Never having the chance to play Classic the way I wanted, it seemed like I was destined just to never play World of Warcraft. But then, I saw something that inspired me. I came across this video, and it changed my whole perspective. I watched someone who only played World of Warcraft go into the world of Gilenor for the first time, completely blind, no guides, no spoilers. I was quickly enthralled. I couldn't stop watching as he stumbled his way through the game. While others may make fun of him for playing the game wrong, he embraced the game for what it was and adapted. He began to conquer the goals he set for himself and inspired me to do the same. So, this is playing World of Warcraft wrong. Blind, no guides, and certainly no add-ons. We are thrust into Azeroth after creating Bungledurt, our beloved level 1 rogue, to a short cinematic explaining that after a recent invasion by the Burning Legion, their system kingdom, Lordaeron, was decimated. Most of the armies of Stormwind have been called away to fight against the Savage Horde. With Stormwind City as one of the last bastions of human power in the world, ruled by the Child King Anduin, the people remain steadfast in their commitment to the Grand Alliance. However, with the armies gone, the defense of Stormwind now falls to proud adventurers like ourselves. We now find ourselves in Northshire Valley, ready to answer the call. Before we even start our first quest, I look at the character page and notice all the different stats that we have. Looks like agility is just a better form of strength for the rogue, but I'm not sure. They might be weighted a little bit differently. We then meet Deputy Willem, who informs us that they are hard-pressed to keep the peace here, and if we would like to help, we should talk to Marshal McBride inside the Abbey. So, we go inside and talk to Marshal McBride, who's happy to see another volunteer. The first task he gives us is to clean up some of the kobolds infesting the woods to the north.
Be careful.
I then look around the inside of the Abbey for any other quests or interactable object, but I find nothing aside from some benches. Outside, Deputy Willem lets us know that Egan Peltskinner is looking for someone to hunt wolves for him, so we tell Willem we will go talk to Egan. We then take a look at all the vendors outside before finding Egan slightly north of the Abbey entrance. Egan lets us know that some timber wolves have crossed over into the Northshire countryside, and he would like us to get him 8 pieces of tough wolf meat in exchange for some gear. So this is when I'm first introduced to combat. Finding the wolves not even a stone's throw away from Egan. I'm introduced to the rogue's energy reserve and how combo points work. After fighting a few wolves, I get the basic concepts down and understand that combo points don't transfer over to your next target. The enemy must be a certain distance away to use the throwing dagger, so you can't just use them in melee range. And finally, you can fight multiple mobs at once if you're feeling brave. So far, my combat looks something like this. Throw a few daggers, get off a couple sinister strikes, and then finish the enemy off with an eviscerate. I finish getting the tough wolf meat and return to Egan for my reward. I've been getting some gear as drops at this point, so I go back and sell what I can't use to the vendors before going north to find the kobolds. And make quick work of them. I return to Marshal McBride and get 25 copper for my efforts. Afterwards, he informs me that a letter sealed with the insignia of Jorg Carradine was left for me, and I should read it before doing anything else. McBride also explains that the kobold infestation is much worse than they thought, and tasks me with going deeper into the north to investigate the kobold numbers while slaying 10 more kobold workers. Reading Jorg's letter, it appears he is excited to meet a fellow rogue and offers to teach us a few things if we find him by the stables out back. Before we can reach Jorg, though, Deputy Willem has another task for us. It seems that there is a new group of thieves hanging around Northshire called the Defias Brotherhood, who have been seen east across the river. In exchange for 12 of their bandanas, Willem will reward me with a new weapon. We then meet with Jorg by the stables, and he mentions an organization called SI-7, which may covet my skills. I train in stealth and move northbound, finding a camp of kobold workers nearby. It is here that I discover you cannot use stealth in combat. Nevertheless, I slay the required kobold workers and make my way east towards the Defias Brotherhood. I find members of the Defias Brotherhood by the river to the east and begin taking them out. As I'm killing them, I get myself some new gear and my first additional bag, the small blue pouch. I reach level 4 and grab the remaining bandanas. Before turning in the quests, I go back to Jorek to train in pickpocket and backstab. I found out I cannot pickpocket friendly targets, nor wolves, then return to Willem for my shiny new militia dagger. Seeing how reliable we are, and since Willem can't go out on patrol, he offers us 2 more quests. The first is to help out a friend of his, named Millie Osworth, who we have previously seen near Jorek. And the second is to bring him Garrick Padfoot's head, a cutthroat who has been terrorizing the farmers and merchants. I am told he was last seen at a shack near the vineyards to the east and across the bridge. However, before we leave, we see Marshal McBride once more to inform him of our deeds. Alas, he is still not convinced and requests us to go into the mines one more time, this time to purge the Echo Ridge mine of kobold laborers. We stop to sell some of our loot we got from killing mobs, despair at the fact that we cannot dual-wield daggers, and restock on throwing knives. I missed recording accepting Millie's quest, but the short of it is that Millie needs someone to go to the vineyards and gather her grapes, which she left in buckets before the Defias steal them. I sneak my way across the vineyard, grabbing Millie's grapes as I pass, and eventually find Garrick near a shed, reaching level 5. I throw a few daggers at him and take him down, as well as his assistant Doug. I return to Millie, who thanks us and asks us to deliver her great manifest to Brother Niels, who can be found in the Abbey bell tower. Upon reading the manifest, it recalls our heroic deeds of saving her grapes and allows Brother Niels to add a full load of grape bushels to his stores. However, before we go to Brother Niels, we finally go into Echo Ridge Mine and take care of the kobold menace, while picking up a few pockets along the way. After investigating the cave fully and only finding a chest, I sell my loot to a vendor and return back to Willem, who rewards me with the layered tunic.
See you later.
We then go inside to speak with McBride to let him know that the kobold threat is dealt with, grabbing ourselves a nifty belt.
Light bless you.
We are then tasked with reporting south to Goldshire and to deliver McBride's report to Marshal Bugen. The report details the activity of the kobolds, thieves, wolves, and grants us a commendation to be awarded with deputy status with the Stormwind army. Seems like we are slowly moving up in the world, but before we leave, though, we need to talk to Brother Niels, who is grateful to be able to drink wine once more. On our way south, we run into Falkhan Eisenstrider, who tells us of his best friend's establishment, the Lion's Pride Inn. And if we tell innkeeper Farley he sent us, he may give us some discounted rates. As Falkhan directs us down the road, we immediately go off of it and inspect some silverleaf, which requires herbalism to obtain. We also meet a crazy cat lady named Donnie, who is trying to fleece us 40 silver for a cat. We quickly escape and find ourselves in Goldshire. The first thing I find is a mailbox, which appears to be a way to trade with other players over a distance for a small fee. We then find a Stormwind guard who has actual dialogue options and gives us information about the bank, Griffin Master, Guild Master, Inn, Stable Master, class trainers, and profession trainers. Cool thing to note, when asking about certain subjects, he will actually leave a mark on your map so you can find your way. We then report to Marshal Dugan and are awarded with acting deputy status as well as a shield we cannot use. Alas, it seems the mines up north are not the only ones with problems, as Dugan asks us to explore Fargo Deep Mine, just south of Goldshire, as they fear it has become a haven for violent kobolds. I then go inside the smithy nearby to find Smith Argus, who is willing to teach me the art of blacksmithing. However, there seems to be a catch, as I can only know 2 professions at one time. Since I'm not sure if I will retain my level in blacksmithing if I swap it out with another profession later, I decide to test it out myself. So, I learn blacksmithing, hoping to find out. I then run into Remy 2 times, who seems to have a real fascination with gold dust, which I can find on kobolds in the Fargo Deep Mine to the south, or at the Jasperlode Mine to the northeast. He will reward me with cash, as well as a bag of marbles, which actually seems like a really good item. Next to him, I see a trade vendor, and I grab a pickaxe as I imagine mining would go well with blacksmithing. I then ask for directions to the mining trainer, and the guard points me in the direction of Stormwind. We follow the road to Stormwind, and a little bit to the north of Goldshire there seems to be a cemetery. But nothing is interactable, so I leave it alone and continue on. Then, I reach the massive gates of Stormwind, and the music swells. The city greets me with giant statues and a dragon mounted to one of the entry arches. This is where I get completely sidetracked and just go around exploring the city. The amount of players here is no joke, and I finally feel like I'm playing an MMORPG. I find a cheese shop, as well as Renato Gilenor, who is advertising Gilenor Winery, where we can go and get a free bottle of wine. I then proceed to explore every building within sight, eventually finding the bank and deciding to deposit that green malachite I found off of a mob. I find weapon and armor shops specifically tailored to certain gear. I meet Wu Ping, who is a weapon master and can train me to be proficient with swords. Definitely coming back for that.
Light bless you.
I also noticed this outrageous buff that a lot of NPCs in Stormwind seem to have. Rallying Cry of the Dragon Slayer, which is just crazy. Wonder how I get that buff. Just outside, I find Master Sergeant McClure, who informs us that they need assistance. The Alliance and Horde seem to be united in preparing for upcoming war against the Silithid. And should I be interested, I should speak with Field Marshal Snowfall in Ironforge's military ward. I accept the quest, but at the moment, I have no idea where Ironforge is, so I continue my exploration of Stormwind. I find the Grand Exchange, then run into Harlan Bagley, who is running low on knitted clothing to sell, and asks us to take a request to Rema Schneider at the Canal Tailor and Fish Shop. I find Rema, no problem, and complete the quest. After shouting out to an invisible Corbett, it seems Rema also needs something delivered as her son Thurman forgot his tools before he left for the Mage's Quarter. After I leave and head towards the Old Town, I'm granted the Rallying Cry of the Dragon Slayer buff. Not sure why, but I'm cool with it. I also learn about Rested XP, where if you stay in a city or inn for long enough time, your XP bar becomes blue and you gain extra experience for a time. I think this is a cool system and really incentivizes players to plan where they log out if they want the most benefit. I wonder if there is a fatigue system or something for players that stay out in the wilderness too long. I explore Old Town, finding 2 more profession trainers, the Leatherworker and Skinner, as well as a bag vendor. I find Osborne the Nightman and see that I can unlock dual wielding at level 10, which gets me pretty excited. I try to go into the Champions Hall, but I need a rank of Knight or higher. I guess no mere deputies can go in there. I also explore SI7, which seems to be a class hall of sorts for the rogue. We have NPCs that will train me in rogue skills, and others that will sell me thieves' tools and ingredients to make poison. Aside from that, there doesn't seem to be anything I can do here yet. Although I did find a squirrel named No Arm, who also had a Dragon Slayer buff, and this odd statue of Horatio Montgomery MD, who seems to be a famous healer. Not sure what his statue is doing here, or what BTFT or ATFT mean as dates, but it was cool nonetheless. Next, I checked out the command center, which seemed to be the Warriors' equivalent of SI7. But once again, nothing to interact with. I found another profession trainer who teaches cooking, but the price is steep, 1 silver, and I'm still looking for mining anyway to test if I retain levels or not.
See you later.
Odd though, I couldn't find an innkeeper inside to set my hearth. Guess not all inns are able to do that? Looped around Old Town one last time to find an empty shop called the Deadly Venom. Then made my way towards the Dwarf District. Or I would have, but I saw the entrance to Stormwind Keep, and my curiosity got the better of me. At first, I wasn't impressed.
Hello.
It just seemed to house rooms filled with nondescript NPCs and nothing to interact with. But then I got to the Royal Gallery, which housed statues of important figures in history. I got to know the names King Lane I of the House of Rin, Lady Mara Fordragon, High Clerist of Stormwind, Grand Admiral Dalen Proudmoore, commander of the Alliance fleets, and 2 other statues without names engraved, one of a mage and another of an archer. Then I found the Royal
What
Library,
can I do for you?
and the history lesson really began. As I clicked on each book I could read, learning more and more of Azeroth's history. Now, I have no information about the lore of this game, nor how you say all these crazy names, so forgive me if I screw up a few of them. First book I delved into was The Aftermath of the Second War. It told of the devastating Second War against the Orcish Horde. Orgrim Doomhammer, the mighty war chief, conquered the dwarven lands of Khazad-dûm, Lordaeron's central provinces, and even the elves' remote kingdom of Kel'Thalas. Alliance forces under Sir Anduin Lothar, Uther the Lightbringer, and Dalen Proudmoore pushed the orcs back to the shattered lands of Azeroth, where the First Kingdom fell before the orcs' ruthless assault. Besieging Black Rock Spire, in a desperate battle, Doomhammer killed Lothar, but was defeated by Turalyon, Lothar's lieutenant, who rallied the Alliance to rout the orcs. Their surviving orcs fled to the Dark Portal, where the Alliance crushed them in the war's final battle. Doomhammer was captured, and the remaining orcs were imprisoned in Lordaeron. Not sure what any of this means yet, but it's cool nonetheless. The next book, The Guardians of Tirisfal. It chronicled after the Trolls' defeat, the elves of Kel'Thalas rebuilt their homeland, while the human kingdoms of Erethdor prospered under King Thoradin. When Thoradin disappeared, Erethdor expanded beyond Strahd. The original human magi, trained by elves, passed their knowledge to a reckless younger generation, who used magic for personal gain, spreading south and founding the city-state of Dalaran. There, unchecked, magic weakened reality, attracting agents of the Burning Legion, a malevolent force of demons previously banished from the world when the Well of Eternity collapsed millennia earlier. The magicrats of Dalaran, unable to fully contain the demons, sought help from the elves, who revealed the Legion's threat and the dangers of magic. To counter this, the elves and magicrats formed the Secret Guardians of Tirisfal, empowering a single mortal guardian with immense elven and human magic to fight the Legion covertly. The Guardians, chosen by the Council of Tirisfal, protected Erethdor and Kel'Thalas from demonic threats for generations, allowing the Empire to thrive while magic use grew. I absolutely love lore like this, and it gets me thinking of how the timeline works out exactly. Could this human kingdom Erethdor be the first kingdom to fall to the orcs as mentioned in the previous book? Who stepped foot into Azeroth first, the Burning Legion or the Orcish Horde? Next was The New Horde. This book journaled Adalius Blackmore, the chief warden of Durnhold, as he raised an orphaned orc named Thrall as a slave, training him in tactics, philosophy, combat, and gladiatorial fighting, intending to mold him into a weapon. Despite his harsh upbringing, Thrall rejected a slave's life and escaped to find his orc kin, who were defeated and confined in internment camps. Disappointed by their lethargy, Thrall sought out Grom Hellscream, the undefeated leader of the Warsong clan, who inspired him with his unwavering resistance against human oppression. Thrall then discovered his heritage as the son of Durotan, the murdered chieftain of the Frostwolf clan. Thrall learned that Gul'dan had exiled the Frostwolves during the early days of the First War. Under the shaman Drekthar, he embraced his people's ancient shamanistic traditions and became the Frostwolf chieftain. With the help of Orgrim Doomhammer, a former war chief and friend of his father, Thrall revitalized the Horde, freeing the captive orcs and restoring their spiritual identity. He led a siege on Durnhold, liberating the camps but losing Doomhammer in the battle. Taking up Doomhammer's warhammer and armor, Thrall became the new war chief, leading the Horde to destroy the internment camps and ensure their freedom, guided by Hellscream and his vision for his people's future. This one seems to come directly after the events of the aftermath of the Second War, as it references orcs' internment camps and Doomhammer as a former war chief, which escaped from Lordaeron into hiding. Nevertheless, we are introduced to new names like Grom Hellscream and Gul'dan, as well as the mention of the First War. It's things like this that really immerse me into the world of an MMORPG, and once I started reading these books, I just couldn't stop. The next book I picked up was The Alliance of Lordaeron. After the fall of Stormwind Keep, Lord Lothar led the remnants of Azeroth's armies to Lordaeron, uniting the 7 human nations into the Alliance of Lordaeron to counter the Horde's threat. As Supreme Commander, Lothar, with Lieutenants Uther the Lightbringer, Admiral Dalen Proudmoore, and Turallion rallied support from dwarves of Ironforge and high elves of Quel'Thalas. Despite the elves' initial reluctance, the Horde, led by War Chief Doomhammer, expanded with ogres and Amani trolls, conquering Cosmodon and parts of Lordaeron. Using the Demon Soul to enslave the Red Dragonflight, the Second War saw intense battles across continents, with the Horde burning Quel'Thalas' borderlands, securing the elves' full commitment to the Alliance. Internal betrayal by Gul'dan, who abandoned the Horde to seek the tomb of Sargeras, weakened Doomhammer's forces, allowing the Alliance to regroup. Lothar pushed the Horde back to Blackrock Spire, where he died, but Turallion rallied the Alliance to victory, destroying the Dark Portal. The defeated Horde was interned, and the Alliance built Nethergarden to guard against future invasions from Draenor. Now, the events of this book seem to come right before the aftermath of the Second War, telling us Stormwind fell at some point during the Second War, as well as what Lordaeron is. Lordaeron seems to be 7 distinct human nations that came from the remnants of Erethdor, which fell 3,000 years ago. We hear some new names as well. An Asterian Sunstrider, the leader of the elves at the time, Khadgar, now an archmage of such renown, Sargeras, a mysterious existence which Gul'dan was obsessed with, and Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, whom was enslaved by the Horde utilizing a powerful artifact known as the Demon Soul. We also get information that beyond the Dark Portal lies the land of Draenor, the home of the Orcs. Afterwards, we read The Civil War in the Plaguelands, which explained Ner'zhul, the Lich King, imprisoned in the Frozen Throne, was losing power due to the damage from Illidan's spell, and feared destruction by Kil'jaeden's agents. He summoned his servant, Death Knight Prince Arthas, to his side. Arthas, weakened by the Lich King's condition, was embroiled in a civil war in Lordaeron, where Sylvanas Windrunner and her rebel undead, the Forsaken, seized control of the capital city, aiming to defeat the Scourge and Kel'Thuzad. Arthas left Kel'Thuzad in charge of the Scourge and rushed to Northrend, where he faced Illidan's Naga and Blood Elves in a race to reach Icecrown Glacier to protect the Frozen Throne. With a completely new cast of characters, we are introduced to Ner'zhul, the Lich King, Illidan, Kil'jaeden, Prince Arthas, Sylvanas Windrunner, and Kel'Thuzad. This seems to be a different conflict altogether and speaks of a civil war in Lordaeron, where Sylvanas tried to stage a coup over the Undead Empire. This resulted in a split between them, forming the Scourge, which were now under Ner'zhul's lieutenant Kel'Thuzad, and the Forsaken, led by Sylvanas. War raged over the Plaguelands, and the Forsaken claimed the ruined capital of Lordaeron for themselves. Not sure where this is in the timeline, or who Illidan and Kil'jaeden are. The only hint we have of Illidan is his followers are Naga and Blood Elves. After finishing my share of books, I encounter Daniel Tovald, who allows us to make copies of various tomes and writings, provided we bring him a library script. Alas, I don't know where to get one, but I do see more books. The next one, The Caldori and the Well of Eternity. 10,000 years before the First War, between orcs and humans, Azeroth consisted of a single continent, Kalimdor, surrounded by vast seas. At its center was the Well of Eternity, a mystical lake radiating cosmic energy from the Great Dark, nourishing life across the world. A primitive tribe of nocturnal humanoids, drawn to the well's power, settled on its shores and became the Caldori, or the Night Elves, who grew strong, wise, and nearly immortal. They worshipped the moon goddess Elune, built grand structures, and explored Kalimdor, encountering creatures like reclusive dragons and the demigod Cenarius, who taught them to cherish nature. Under Queen Ashara, Night Elf civilization flourished, with temples and roads spanning the continent. Her elite servitors, the Keldori, or Highborn, lived in a lavish palace by the well and considered themselves superior, sparking resentment among other Night Elves. Ashara, intrigued by the well, tasked the Highborn with uncovering its secrets. They discovered how to manipulate its energies, developing primitive magic, which they practiced recklessly despite warnings from Cenarius and others about its dangers. As their power grew, Ashara and the Highborn became increasingly arrogant and cruel. Distancing themselves from the rest of their people, a young scholar, Urian Stormrage, sensed a corrupting force at work, foreseeing a dark change looming over the Night Elves. I think we can safely put this first in the timeline, and we now know Kalimdor is older than the Eastern Kingdoms, with even reclusive dragons and demigods still communicating with mortals. This was a really cool read and was an awesome origin story for the Night Elves. I then get trolled by Draconic for Dummies, but with the cursor icon being a gear instead of a magnifying glass, perhaps there is more to this book. I scour the library for any more books to read and find Milton Sheep, who sells nothing. Then I find some more books near Lord Gregor Lescovar. The first, Aegwynn and the Dragon Hunt. Aegwynn, a fierce young woman, becomes a guardian, wielding the magical powers of Tirisfal. Frustrated by the rigid, male-dominated Council of Tirisfal, she seeks to prove herself through bold actions, often prioritizing valor over wisdom. As her power grows, she tracks powerful demons to Northrend, where they are draining magic from the last dragonflights. With the dragon's aid, she defeats the demons, but a greater threat emerges. Sargeras, the demon king of the Burning Legion. He appears as a dark visage, warning of the Legion's coming onslaught. Aegwynn, confident in her abilities, battles and destroys Sargeras' physical form, sealing his body in an ancient underwater hall. Unbeknownst to her, this was Sargeras' plan. He transfers his spirit into her body, hiding within her soul, setting the stage for future calamity. Now some of the pieces of the puzzle come together. Civil War in the Plague Lands mentions Northrend, and we finally learn the identity of Sargeras, the Demon King of the Burning Legion. We also learn that Aegwynn seals Sargeras' body deep underwater, which ties to Gul'dan looking for his tomb deep under the ocean. Is Northrend where the dragons fled to after the Second War, not wanting to be used by powerful artifacts as instruments of war? Maybe, but this still leaves a lot of questions about the Lich King and the horde of undead that seem to thrive there. Next, we see Beyond the Dark Portal. Shortly after Netherguard's completion, the Dark Portal reopened, allowing orc clans led by Shaman Ner'zhul to invade Azeroth, aiming to steal magical artifacts to open new portals and escape their doomed world, Draenor. King Taranas of Lordran sent alliance forces led by Khadgar and General Turleon to stop the orcs. Despite support from Elven Ranger Illyria, Dwarf Kurdran, and soldier Denath, Khadgar couldn't prevent Ner'zhul from opening portals to other worlds. The resulting magical storms began tearing Draenor apart. Ner'zhul escaped through a portal, while Khadgar and his allies destroyed the Dark Portal to protect Azeroth, sacrificing themselves as Draenor collapsed. Their survival remains uncertain. And boom, some big reveals with this one. Ner'zhul, the Lich King, is none other than an orc shaman who invades Azeroth after the Second War. We also may have just learned the names of those last two statues in the Royal Gallery. Perhaps the Elven Archer is Illyria and the Mage is Khadgar? Do they not have plaques because they are unsure if they are alive or dead? Sadly, I couldn't find any more books, so I left the library to finally look around Stormwind Keep. I got to what I assume was the throne room for an interesting scene. Apparently the humans and dragons are on bad terms. As it turns out, a dragon named Lady Onyxia was disguised as a human, and this one badass High Lord Bolvar just single-handedly destroys her minions. I'll look around the room as the fight happens and see entrances to Warsong Gulch, Altric Valley, and Arathi Basin, which I don't have the levels to enter. But first, let's see the end of this fight. And the Child King just pops up afterwards like nothing happened. He asks me if I like Stormwind, and I make my way back to the war room for some sweet reading. The first book I find, The Dark Portal and the Fall of Stormwind. As Kil'jaeden prepared the Horde to invade Azeroth, Medivh, possessed by Sargeras, struggled with his corruption. King Lane of Stormwind grew suspicious of Medivh's darkening spirit and confided in his lieutenant, Anduin Lothar. Sargeras, through Medivh, manipulated the warlock Gul'dan with promises of godlike power if he led the Horde to Azeroth and found Sargeras' tomb. Gul'dan opened the Dark Portal, connecting Azeroth and Draenor, allowing orc scouts and armies to invade. Durotan, an orc leader, opposed Gul'dan's corruption and was exiled with his Frostwolf clan. The Horde established a base in the Black Morass and clashed with Stormwind's defenders, revealing strengths and weaknesses on both sides. As the Horde's invasion intensified, internal conflicts emerged. King Lane underestimated the orcs, while Lothar, believing in direct confrontation, attacked Medivh's tower with Khadgar, killing the possessed guardian and banishing Sargeras' spirit. Medivh's pure spirit lingered in the astral plane. Despite this, the Horde pressed on, overwhelming Stormwind. Orgrim Doomhammer, seeing the Horde's corruption, killed Gul'dan's puppet, Blackhand, and became war chief after Durotan's assassination by Gul'dan's forces. Durotan's infant son, spared and enslaved by a human officer, would later become a great orc leader. The Horde besieged Stormwind, assassinated King Lane, and razed the kingdom. Lothar, returning too late, vowed to reclaim his homeland with his surviving warriors. Okay, so more questions answered and more pieces falling in place. Kil'jaeden seems to be an orc, or some other leader of the Horde, but since this is happening during the First War, I have to think he is some orc chief of a different clan. We are introduced to Tirisfal guardian Medivh, who is struggling with Sargeras' corruption. I'm thinking Sargeras corrupted the very source of the Guardian's power when he cursed Egwin, and once a new Guardian was chosen, the curse followed as well, corrupting the new Guardian Medivh. We also begin to understand Gul'dan's character a bit more by learning that he was manipulated by Sargeras and promised godlike power. The internal conflicts are made more clear, with Gul'dan's reasoning for exiling the Frostwolves. There are still some mysteries since we don't get any information about why Kil'jaeden is after Ner'zhul, but I'm sure we will figure that out at some point. I have to say, at this point, it seems like the big bad evil guy is Sargeras. He seems to be orchestrating everything from the shadows, and with his cunning, he may have even destroyed the mortal enemy of the Burning Legion, the Guardians. The next book, The Battle of Grim Batol. In a war-torn south, the Horde's remnants struggle to survive. Grom Hellscream's Warsong clan evaded capture, but Deadeye's Bleeding Hollow clan was confined to internment camps in Lordran, where wardens quickly regained control. Meanwhile, in Khazmodon's northern wastes, the Dragonmaw clan, led by the warlock Nekros, used the Demon Soul artifact to enslave the Dragon Queen Alexstrasza and her dragonflight, building a secret army in the abandoned Grim Batol stronghold. Nekros planned to unleash his forces and dragons on the Alliance to revive the Horde's conquest of Azeroth. However, a resistance group led by the human mage Ronan destroyed the Demon Soul, freeing Alexstrasza. Her dragons devastated Grim Batol and most of the Dragonmaw clan. The Alliance captured the surviving orcs, placing them in internment camps, making the Horde's defeat and the end of the orcs' bloodlust. This seems to take place around the same time of the New Horde, and gives us information about the Horde's enslavement of the Red Dragonflight, and their eventual fall. It also suggests an end to the orcs' furious bloodlust, which I'm not sure if I'm looking too much into this or not, but is it possible that the orcs were cursed, or maybe corrupted? I wouldn't put it past Sargeras, especially since he seems to like messing with orc warlocks. The last book I find is called The War of the Spider. While Thrall freed the orcs in Lordaeron, Ner'zhul, the Lich King, built a citadel above Icecrown Glacier in Northrend, amassing undead forces. His expansion was challenged by the ancient subterranean kingdom of Azjol Nerub, led by humanoid spiders immune to his plague and telepathic control. The Nerubians' elite warriors used hit-and-run tactics, frustrating Ner'zhul's efforts. Through attrition aided by dreadlords and undead, Ner'zhul conquered Azjol Nerub, collapsing its temples. He raised the Nerubian corpses using necromancy and adopted their architectural style for his fortresses. Unopposed, the Lich King prepared for his broader mission, reaching out to the dark souls in human lands. This seems to take place before Civil War in the Plaguelands, and is the story of how the Lich King made his kingdom. Ner'zhul escaped Khadgar by using one of his many portals and must have ended up in Northrend. We also learn of the Nerubians, a humanoid spider species, and their vast subterranean kingdom. The last line suggests that perhaps Prince Arthas was the dark soul that answered the call. After not finding any more books, I finally make my way towards the Dwarven District, where I can find my mining instructor. The Dwarven District is a bit unique, since it doesn't have any signs outside to tell you what building is what, but I strike gold anyway, and the first place I go into seems to be another inn you cannot set your hearth to. But it just so happens to have some sweet lore placed on the front table. You thought we were done with books? Nope. This one is called The War of the Three Hammers. The dwarves of Ironforge Mountain, ruled by High King Mortimus Anvilmar, faced internal conflict as their society outgrew its mountain cities, splitting into 3 factions: the Bronzebeards, the Wildhammers, and the Dark Irons. After Anvilmar's death, a civil war erupted for control of Ironforge. The Bronzebeards, led by Thane Madoran, expelled the Wildhammers and Dark Irons. The Wildhammers, under Thane Cardros, founded Grimbatol in the north, while the Dark Irons, led by Therusian, settled in the Red Ridge Mountains, founding a city named after him. Tensions persisted, and Therusian and his sorceress wife, Modgud, launched attacks on Ironforge and Grimbatol to claim Khazad-dûm. The Bronzebeards defeated Therusian's forces, while the Wildhammers, led by Cardros, killed Modgud and repelled her army. The combined Bronzebeard and Wildhammer forces then crushed the remaining Dark Irons. In desperation, Therusian summoned Ragnaros, the Fire Lord, inadvertently causing his own death and the creation of Blackrock Mountain. His surviving Dark Irons were then enslaved by Ragnaros. Fearing Ragnaros' power, the Bronzebeards returned to rebuild Ironforge, while the Wildhammers abandoned Grimbatol, tainted by Modgud's dark magic. Rejecting Ironforge's offer of refuge, the Wildhammers settled in the hinterlands, building Airy Peak and bonding with griffins. The dwarves of Ironforge constructed the Thandal Span to maintain trade with the Wildhammers. Statues honoring Madoran and Cardros were built as a warning and reminder of the Dark Iron's fate. Over time, ideological differences led the Bronzebeards and the Wildhammers to part ways, though they initially maintained close ties. This time, we get some awesome background story to the dwarves, learning how they split into different factions and fought for control over Khazad-dûm. We learn of the creation of Blackrock Mountain and Ragnaros, the Fire Lord. It was a Pyrrhic victory for Bronzebeards and Wildhammers, but they were able to stop the Dark Iron's conquest. Timeline-wise, I think this is between the First and Second War, due to the previous references of Grimbatol being abandoned and haunted during Necros' stay. That said, what is Ragnaros up to now? What about the Dark Irons? Are they still enslaved? After ruminating on these thoughts, I find what appears to be a small hunter's lodge, an empty city hall, a gun vendor, an axe merchant, then finally, Gelman Stonehand, the mining trainer. I pick up mining and activate the find minerals ability while I look around some more of this district. I find what I assume to be the blacksmithing workshop, but aside from that, nothing else. Now, I make my way to Cathedral Square, finding an empty office of the Argent Dawn and actually populated City Hall, where I meet Royal Factor Bathrilor, whom seems to specialize in finding people. So maybe I can make use of his services later. I find an orphanage with ladders I can't climb,
Hey there.
a nice fountain fixture in the center of the square, then finally I enter the Cathedral of Light. If SI7 was the Rogue class hall, the Mission Center the Warriors class hall, then the Cathedral of Light seems to be the Priest and Paladin class hall. Not much to say here aside from the books I cannot interact with, what a tease, and the creepy underground crypts that seem to have been recently defiled. Actually, I lied. I did find this Scarlet Crusade emissary freak who was standing in front of a couple of Iron Maidens, so that's something. On my way out, I also found an acorn vendor and a first aid trainer. I clicked train, seeing if it would ask me which profession to overwrite, but instead, I just learned first aid?
Be careful.
Huh? Turns out first aid isn't a profession, but a secondary skill? Well, there goes 1 silver, but I think it was well spent since we can make bandages that should come in handy during combat. We stop at Just Mace's on our way out of the Cathedral Square, then run into some children fishing next to a level !! sewer beast. I didn't see anything. We then find ourselves in the park, which seems to be the Night Elf district of Stormwind. It seems to have mostly empty buildings, but really cool druid sculptures and an awesome well at the center. We find the herbalism trainer and see that we cannot train it, which spikes my anxiety until I go into the skills menu and see the button to unlearn a profession. We find ourselves in another abandoned inn, but someone forgot a book on the front table. Smile. This one, The War of the Ancients. The Highborn's reckless magic use at the Well of Eternity attracted Sargeras, the destroyer of worlds, who led his burning legion, a vast army of demons, to invade Azeroth. Queen Ashara, corrupted by Sargeras' power, opened a portal in the well to allow his entry, while the Legion, led by Archimond and Manaroth, devastated Kalimdor. Malfurion Stormrage, with his brother Illidan and priestess Tyrande, sought to resist. Illidan, struggling with magical addiction, joined Malfurion to enlist Cenarius and the Ancient Dragons, led by Alexstrasza, to fight the Legion. Despite their efforts, the Legion's strength was overwhelming, and the dragon Neltharion, now Deathwind, betrayed his allies, weakening the resistance. Malfurion, realizing the well was the Legion's link to Azeroth, proposed destroying it, despite opposition from those reliant on its power. Tyrande supported him, leading to a plan to storm Ashara's temple to close the well and stop Sargeras' invasion. Boom, some more crazy details. Sargeras is not only the Demon King of the Burning Legion, but also known as the Destroyer of Worlds. The Well of Eternity was the original entry point for the Burning Legion to come into Azeroth, answering one of my first questions. The Burning Legion were the first to invade Azeroth, not the Orcs. And, if in fact Malfurion's plan succeeds, perhaps this pushes Sargeras to find another entry point, namely Draenor. We are introduced to some new characters while also getting more information on older ones. We finally know who Illidan is and the awkward love triangle he shared between his brother and Tyrande. We know very little about the dragon Neltharion, now known as Deathwind, but if I had to guess, I'd say Sargeras probably manipulated him in the same manner as Gul'dan. Leaving the abandoned inn, we see what looks like a druid circle around the well in the center. Is this well an imitation of the Well of Eternity? After seeing another player disappear into the water, I waste a good amount of time thinking it is a portal to somewhere else, when in all likelihood the player just logged off. And that's pretty much it for the park, so we head to the final district of Stormwind, the Mage Quarter. Before we enter, we are once again sidetracked to another building just outside the Mage's Quarter, where we see a bunch of NPCs and some players behind a barricade, which leads down some stairs. I don't know where it leads, but it says I need to be level 15 if I want to enter, so we'll have to come back at another time. Outside, we see something called a meeting stone, which tells us the location is named the Stockade, and it recommends level 24 to 32 before entering. I'm assuming it's some sort of dungeon or instance content. Not far away, I find the Enchanter Trainer, then finally make my way into the Mage's Quarter proper. I find a Tailor Trainer, another Herbalism Trainer, an Alchemist Trainer, another tavern or inn which I cannot set my hearth to, the Hatter, Evan Larson, and finally, Thurman. Yeah, remember that quest I have to deliver his tools? Well, I totally did. After giving him his tools, we are rewarded with some experience and finally make our way up the crazy spiral ramp around the tower in the center. We enter the Wizard Sanctum, which I assume is a class hall for mages, but find no books to read, so we leave immediately and take a back alley we missed. We find another acorn salesman, then the Slaughtered Lamb Inn. At first, I thought it was just another empty building, but if you explore and go down into the basement, you find yourself in a hidden Warlock class hall. This was so cool to find. It makes me wonder just how Warlocks are treated in lore, if they have to hide like this. I explore more crypts, which are connected to the hideout, and find Acolyte Perenna, suspiciously hanging out by a strange purple glyph painted on the ground. Again, I didn't see anything. Once again, I'm disappointed that the people who should have the most books have none to read, and I leave to find the firework vendor around the corner. With that, I do one final loop around the Mage Quarter to find Adair Gilroy selling scrolls, and a wonderful surprise on his table. 2 books. First one, Mount Hyjal and Illidan's Gift. After surviving the Great Sundering, a catastrophic explosion caused by the destruction of the Well of Eternity, the surviving Night Elves, led by Malfurion, Tyrande, and Cenarius, journeyed on rafts to a new landmass. They mourned the destruction of their world, partly caused by their own passions and the invasion of Sargeras and his legion. Upon reaching the new land, they discovered Mount Hyjal had survived and chose it as their new home. However, they found a lake tainted by magic created by Illidan, who had poured waters from the Well of Eternity into it, forming a new well. Despite Illidan's belief that this was a gift, Malfurion, wary of magic's chaotic nature, imprisoned him with the help of Cenarius and appointed Maeve Shadowsong as his jailer. Fearing further catastrophe, the Night Elves decided not to destroy the new well, but vowed never to use magic again. Under Cenarius' guidance, they embraced Druidism to heal the land and restore their forests at the base of Mount Hyjal. Well, looks like Malfurion's plan worked, but with great cost. Poor Illidan is locked up, and we get more lore showing why the Night Elves of the modern era do not practice magic, but instead prefer Druidism. I went back to character creation to check, and yeah, you cannot make a Night Elf mage. Really cool how the lore keeps building on itself. Although I've yet to find anything on gnomes. Are they a relatively new species? Maybe their history is guarded? Anyway, the next book, Archimonde's Return and the Flight to Kalimdor. Arthas and the Scourge, led by the Lich Kel'Thuzad, attacked Dalaran to steal Medivh's spellbook, enabling Kel'Thuzad to summon the demon. Archimonde, under Kil'jaeden's orders, led the Burning Legion and Scourge to Kalimdor to destroy Nordrassil, the World Tree. Medivh, returned as a prophet, urged the Horde and Alliance to unite against this threat, but their mutual distrust forced him to guide them separately to Kalimdor using prophecy and deception. There, they encountered the Kaldori, or the Night Elves. The Orcs under Thrall allied with the Tauren, but faced internal strife as Grom Hellscream succumbed to demonic bloodlust, clashing with the Night Elf Sentinels and killing the demigod Cenarius. Hellscream later redeemed himself by helping defeat Manoroth, ending the Orcs' blood curse. Meanwhile, Hyrande Whisperwind, the Night Elf High Priestess, rallied her forces, awakening the Druids, including Malfurion Stormrage, to combat the Legion. Tyrande freed Illidan, hoping for his aid, but he pursued his own agenda. The Night Elves, with nature's help, fought to protect the Well of Eternity and Nordrassil, as the Legion's success would destroy the world. So, I wasn't crazy. The Orcs were cursed, but for once it wasn't Sargeras. It was the demon lord Manoroth. And this must be when Illidan made his way to Northrend. Bro, Grom Hellscream killed a demigod. That's crazy. And it appears like Medivh's soul, which was stuck in the astral plane, sees the truth behind the conflict and tries to get the Horde and Alliance to work together to defeat the common enemy, the Burning Legion. Although his plea fell on deaf ears, I think it's telling that the Guardian, even after death, is still trying to play their role. This brings up some important questions. Was Medivh truly the last Guardian? Is his soul still stuck in the astral plane? How is Manoroth connected to the Legion? What is the Beyond? What is the Great Dark? More and more mysteries seem to pile up on top of one another. I exit the shop, and finally, after doing a full circle around Stormwind, I find Gilenor Winery, where I use my wine ticket I got when I first entered the city to get a free bottle. I drink it, and nothing happens. Guess it wasn't strong enough. I remember hearing about a Griffin Master, so I quickly find him, but apparently I cannot use his services since I do not know any flight paths. I find this strange, as for world building it would make more sense for the Griffin Master to know these paths, but from a gameplay perspective, it definitely makes more sense to have the player unlock them and feel a sense of progression. I don't know, maybe I would have had it that you need to have a proper rank or paperwork to use the flight path. That way, it could still make sense lore-wise and for gameplay. Or maybe I'm just being picky. Either way, I use my hearth and begin making my way back to Goldshire. On my way, I find a copper vein and start leveling my mining. I see in the blacksmithing interface that I can make rough sharpening stones, so I make a couple of them to also get my blacksmithing skill up. I use the stone on the militia dagger for a pretty decent buff. With levels now in blacksmithing, I unlearned the profession to see if I retain my skill. I talk to Smith Argus again and train my blacksmithing once more, and yeah, I don't retain levels. So we're gonna have to decide which two professions to grab. I go inside the Lion's Pride Inn and talk with William Pestle, who runs an apothecary in Stormwind. He's in dire need of wax and asks us to gather large candles, which it just so happens kobolds seem to like to gather. He will reward us with some money and 5 glowing wax sticks, which, like the marble bag, seem to be a great way to debuff a tricky enemy. I speak with Innkeeper Farley and make my home the Lion's Pride Inn. I also complete the rest and relaxation quest, getting 5 pumpkins for my effort and ding to level 6.
See you around.
I find a cooking trainer in the back and learn the secondary skill. It seems like professions are 10 copper to learn, and secondary skills are based at 1 silver. I explore the Lion Pride's Inn to discover a rogue trainer upstairs, but since I spent most of my money, I cannot afford my new abilities. one of which, Gouge, looks to be really good. All isn't lost though, as on the table we find our last book of the session, I promise, Ice Crown and the Frozen Throne. Kil'jaeden cast Ner'zhul's spirit encased in an icy crystal into Azeroth, where it crashed into Northrend's Ice Crown Glacier, forming the Frozen Throne. From there, Ner'zhul, now the Lich King, extended his psychic influence, enslaving Northrend's creatures, like ice trolls and Wendigo, building an army within Ice Crown's labyrinth. Under the Dreadlord's watch, he tested his powers by unleashing a plague of undeath on the human settlement in Dragonblight, killing and reanimating the villagers as zombies within days. Their spirits fueled his growing power, allowing him to control them effortlessly. Over months, he spread the plague across Northrend's human population, massing an undead army and preparing for a greater test. Now, from this, it seems like perhaps Ner'zhul did not escape using one of his own portals, but instead maybe fell in battle at some point, where Kil'jaeden tried to use his soul to incubate power. This now explains the connection between Kil'jaeden and Ner'zhul, and possibly even hints at a power struggle between them, as Ner'zhul vies for agency, but Kil'jaeden uses him as a weapon. Perhaps it was Kil'jaeden who was the closest out of the Orc chieftains to obtain supremacy, as it mentioned in a previous text that Kel'Thuzad, Ner'zhul's lieutenant, summoned the demon Archimonde, who then obeyed Kil'jaeden. It still isn't entirely clear what the relationship between Kil'jaeden and Ner'zhul is, and I can't wait to find out more as I explore the world. After thinking about what professions I wanted to train, I was stuck between herbalism and alchemy for the utility potions would bring, and leatherworking and skinning for the consistent gear upgrades. I decided to train in leatherworking and skinning first and see how it goes. I still haven't found the engineering trainer, but I'm sure if I ask a Stormwind guard, they will point me in the right direction. So, that brings us to the end of the first session of gameplay. There was a lot of lore in this one, and as much as I love the lore of this world, I'm hoping we will get more combat-focused gameplay and quests. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next Playing World of Warcraft Wrong. Hey guys, no add-ons here. I just want to say thank you to everyone who watched this video, and if you would like more content like this, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons. I'm relatively new to making videos like this, so if you have any feedback that would help me improve, that would be greatly appreciated. Once again, thanks for watching.